Auburn and Houston, Max. A
Yes.
high-profile non-conference showdown in SEC basketball this season. These two played the second game of the year last year. Auburn won that one, as we know, 74-69 in the Toyota Center. That was the game after the infamous plane stories and all this other stuff that came out. Um, yeah. And then, of course, Houston ruined Max Barr's entire offseason um, in the national championship game.
For those of you that don't know, Cougars fans that are tuning into this way too early prediction, I was living month to month this past year, and I had faithfully put all of my brackets into the Houston Cougars, and I thought rent for the next month or two was secured, and then it was ripped away from me within 60 seconds. So, Cougars fans, I feel your pain that you probably still feel from last year. Speaking of last year, Blake, you did mention that game, second game of the year for both teams. It was a crazy game. So the reason I want to talk about last year, though, so the odds on that game, Blake, the odds closed Houston minus 5.5 with a total of 141.5. Now, this game is being played a week later than last year, so both teams will have one or two more games in, but this is both teams' first high major game. So Houston and Auburn will both get 2 or 3 mid-majors, and then this is the first big-time test for both. The Bart Torvik odds right now are Houston minus 5.5, over under 136. So basically no change from last year's odds, except maybe a little bit more defensive, maybe a little bit less offensive efficiency. But that was the game last year where Pettiford had the explosion, the 21 points. Chaney Johnson had 11, 10, and 4 off the bench. Broom went for 20 and 9 with 5 blocks. It was a huge effort for Auburn, and then Houston had much more balance. 5 guys between 10 and 13 points. Remember, that was where Javier Francis, their big man, was still limited with injury. But pretty much everybody I just said is not going to be playing in this game. New teams, like brand new teams, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that stands out for both these teams, we talked about before, Houston has the second best national championship odds right now behind Purdue over at FanDuel. They're at 10-1 on the national title odds there. And, if you look at Houston from the standpoint of, they've got guys coming back that were a big part of a team that made the run they did, really, as we said, feel like they should have won the national championship. And so I think that's where I start. If you're looking at the differences, new teams, as you said, but man, Houston has got 3 guys who played, we're looking at them on the screen right now, that played such a huge role in them getting to the level that they did. And it's like, okay, Sharp averages 12.6 points per game. Uzan averages 11.4. And I mean, you just, yes, there's no Crier. I get that. And there's no, Juwan Roberts. But if that's your nucleus and you got Kelvin Sampson, that's a great starting point for a team that once again should be a number 1 seed, I would think, come next March, barring significant injury somewhere.
Yeah, so you can't see depth on the graphic. So for Houston, like always, they just got athletes and versatility coming out left and right. They did get a transfer, Khalifa Sako, 6'11" grad transfer that'll be in behind Jojo Tugler. But a little bit less front court there, because you had Jojo Tugler, Juwan Roberts, and Francis rotating. Now you kind of lose that seniority and you replace it with the freshman Chris Cenac, who still is extremely talented, highly rated, just like Harwell. But Juwan Roberts, Blake, was he's in the record books for all-time NCAA starts, or something, all game appearances, something like that. You're going to miss that. And this being the first high major game for Houston, you're going to be able to see these freshmen tested out for the first time. In behind the backcourt, you've got freshman Kingston Flemings for Houston, and then redshirt freshman Chase McCarty and then sophomore Mercy Miller are also expected to take a nice leap for the Cougars fans watching this. Auburn in behind Tahaad Pettiford. You have freshman Caden Magwood. You've got Abdul Bashir, who's a JUCO transfer, who's just an absolute three-point sniper. Interested to see how he translates, as well as JUCO transfer Elijah Freeman at 6'8". He's got that range, nice pro frame in behind Keyshawn Hall or Overton there, and then a little bit less front court depth than last year. There's no Cardwell coming off the bench. There's no Chaney Johnson coming off the bench. So a little bit less depth. However, you've got a little bit more coming off the bench in the backcourt. So both teams got some nice pieces coming off the bench, Blake.
Can I tell you what I appreciate about this? We're talking about a game that's being played 3 months from now or whatever it is. And we still got War Eagle 17 that hadn't forgot about our pick from last November, where we both picked Houston, I think, in that prediction video. Has not forgotten about it at all. Now that dedication I can appreciate. So we'll see who we pick by the time we get to this one. But I think you said it. To me, you're going to see what the standout freshmen do on this Houston team, what the rotation looks like, of course, with them added into it. But I think, I'm going to stick with kind of the theme I've mentioned with Auburn all offseason. I think that is where, if you just look at the 5 guys on the screen right here that we have for Auburn, knowing that, obviously there's several guys we feel like that have a chance to be in that bench rotation and all that. But like this group right here, just as a whole, the chemistry is what I want to see. Like I want to see exactly what this looks like. Again, going up against 2 guys with the experience of Uzan and Sharp, and you're looking, Pettiford is a sophomore, but feels like a guy that obviously has played bigger than that. In all the key moments, we put out the stats last year about how he seemed to play better away from home in a lot of big games and just how good he was in those. I mean, right? And this was a perfect example of that, wasn't it? I mean, he scored 21 points in this game, second game of the season, and that's when you're kind of looking at it and saying, uh-oh, like this guy is for real. Like this guy is a stud. And so you kind of have your guarantee there with him. You know what to expect, right? But it's like, sure, we make our predictions about how we think Keyshawn Hall is going to lead the team in scoring, and this is the kind of game where it's like, all right, let's see. Are you taking over a game like this against what you know is going to be a tough defensive team? I mean, it's a Kelvin Sampson coach team. They're going to defend. We know that. And so I'm really fascinated by just how that projected first 5. Remember, we're not Bruce Pearl here, so we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. But I think it is kind of something where I look at this and feel like, man, this is kind of a prove-it spot for some of at least probably 3 or more positions for Auburn in terms of the starting group in a big, big game like this.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to mention, obviously no Janai Broome, but against a top defense like Houston, and last year you get 20 from him. It's almost like a pressure release. End of the shot clock, you got 10 seconds left in the shot clock, just dump it down to Broome, and maybe he can get close to the rim and get a look off. Maybe have a chance at an offensive rebound. Keyshawn Murphy has a different offensive kind of style than Broome. He's not as heavy, not as back to the basket. Has that game, but not as much as Broome, obviously. I think even similar to last year, Blake, Houston's success was it wasn't completely tied to this, but Jojo Tugler being on the floor or off the floor was a big indicator of how good Houston is playing defensively in and around the rim. And they were still able to bring in a senior like Javier Francis. And you've got a guy that's been there forever like Juwan Roberts. What happens to Houston this year if Tugler's got 2 fouls in the first 5 minutes of the game? Because that's just how he plays. As Jojo Tugler. He's the most aggressive. He's probably the best defender in the nation, minute for minute. But how many minutes does he get on the floor? You have Keyshawn Hall running to the rim. You got Keyshawn Murphy drawing you out towards the 3-point line, making you guard in space. What does Houston look like defensively if there's 10 minutes left in the game and Jojo Tugler's got 4 fouls and you can start trying to pound the rim a little bit? I think it's going to be it's not going to be a completely just like Houston falls off they completely fall off the tracks, but they don't have a Javier Francis they can bring in. They don't have a Juwan Roberts who's been there, done that they can slide over. They need Tugler to be on that floor a little bit longer than last year. Something to see.
8 straight seasons, Houston has finished in the top 21 in defensive efficiency. Only one of those seasons is they finished outside the top 13. And so, like, that's been a constant. Their effective field goal percentage defense, they finished in the top five for, or excuse me, top six for 7 or 8 straight seasons as well. I mean, their 2 point defense, they finished in the top seven 5 straight seasons. Actually, top seven, 7 of the last 8 seasons. Block percentage, they finished in the top four in the last 4 seasons. Like, it is just wild to look at these numbers and see that they are going to play the way they want to play. They are going to force the other team more often than not to play the way they want to play. And I think that's going to be, to me, a real kind of fun scenario to really look at what Auburn is going to be in a situation like that. Because as you said, there's new players on both sides here. These aren't the old guards, right? It's not the guys we've been seeing for years and years and years. They're not there. You know, some of them are, but not everyone. And so I really think that we've done some really fascinating matchups so far. This might be the most fascinating to me because I think of the unknown elements, but also leaning on the past trends and seeing how this game will be played just from a stylistic standpoint. Because, too, like, Auburn probably plays a little bit differently this year than they did last year. And meanwhile, I don't know that Houston plays any differently. No matter if the roster's different or not, I just think they're going to do what Kelvin Sampson wants to do, and that is grind you out, play at their pace, and attack you on the glass. They're going to bully you. Like, they're going to be physical, all those things. And that's where, like, I'm excited to see how this Auburn team reacts to an opponent like that.
Yeah. We had Chris asked, do you think Houston will be as good offensively? It's going to be different. Last year, they were one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. Yeah, like LJ Cryer last year made 123 3-pointers at 42.4%. 123 3-pointers at 42%. That is just ridiculous. You don't see that very often at all. I mean, Kobe Bryant, that 2 years ago at Dayton, I think he got to like 100. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 123 is crazy. And so they're going to be a little bit less shooting. And then Juwan Roberts, with those baby hook shots and push shots he would do from the mid-range, Cenac is dynamic. He is dynamic, don't get me wrong. But you don't get a Juwan Roberts just walking into campus every so often. The guy was a machine. So I think it's going to be a little bit different. But also, look at the jump that Uzan made last year, Blake. No one expected Uzan to make a jump that big. He probably gets a little bit better. Sharp probably gets better. Jojo Tugler probably advances his offensive game a little bit. So I think the 3-point shooting regresses. But like you said, that trio of guys, Uzan, Sharp, Tugler, I mean, gosh, that's a good trio.
Houston has won at least 32 games the past 4 seasons. I mean, dude.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
I don't care what anyone says about Kelvin Sampson or Houston. I just don't care. These guys just win. They just win. Yeah. But Auburn fans will say, you know what? They didn't win last year at the Toyota Center because the Tigers came in there, got the victory, and this will be a very, very fun matchup. No question about it. So, all right. Max, anything else you want to add on this one?
It is worth noting, I think this game is played on a Sunday. I'm pretty sure it lands on a Sunday, November 16th. Is 16th a Sunday? It is. Yeah. This game is played on a Sunday. So while you're watching your football and your fantasy team is already down 75 from the Thursday night games, you can turn off NFL Red Zone, mute Red Zone, put Scott Hansen on the other TV, and you're throwing on Tigers, Cougars, and Birmingham.
Do we know the time on the game yet? Do we have that?
I couldn't find the time. All right.
Let me find our NFL schedule for November the 16th. Oh boy. It looks like a pretty lackluster NFL schedule. I'm not going to lie to you.
I think so.
Lions at the Eagles is the primetime game, and all the other games are pretty meh. So, Bengals at Steelers, there's not a lot. All right, there's your game of the week. I don't care what sport. Yep. Auburn, Houston is your game of the week, period. So, there you have it. All right.
There you have it.
We're done.